This is a story of courage, wonder, and compassion. A journey that began in a small house in England and carried a young girl's dreams across oceans into the forests of Africa. A life lived in the company of chimpanzees, watching them, learning from them, speaking for them. This is the life of Dame Jane Goodall, a woman whose work redefined the boundary between human and animal, whose heart never ceased to hope, and whose voice echoed across continents to call humanity back home to nature. Valerie Jane Goodall was born on April 3, 1934 in London, England. Her parents were Mortimer Herbert Morris Goodall and Margaret Myfanwy Joseph, who wrote under the pen name Van Morris Goodall. She had one younger sister, Judy, and family life was loving and supportive. From early childhood, Jane exhibited a deep fascination with animals and the natural world. As a child, she would roam her garden, sketch birds, watch insects, note their behavior, and carry a notebook to record what she saw. She read voraciously, from Dr. Dolittle to Tarzan, from nature guides to adventure stories, and dreamed of going to Africa. Her parents encouraged her curiosity. Her father once gave her a stuffed chimpanzee as a gift, which she named Jubilee. That toy remained symbolic through her life, a tangible memory of her earliest connection to chimps. When World War II broke out, Jane was still young. The family moved during wartime to Bournemouth on England's south coast. The war years brought air raids, blackouts, and the disruption of schooling, yet Jane's love of nature remained her refuge. In school, Jane was a quiet dreamer. She pleased her teachers, but often felt constrained by classroom walls. She preferred to be outdoors, observing birds, insects, gardens. At Uplands, a private girls' school, she earned her school certificate, around 1950, and higher certificate, around 1952, before leaving formal schooling. Though she left formal schooling relatively early, Jane never abandoned learning. She continued to read, sketch, explore, and nurture that spark of wonder that would carry her far beyond the classrooms of England. Even as a little girl, Jane would disappear into hedges or watch birds for hours. We knew she was different, not fidgety, but fully absorbed in what she was looking at. After 1952, Jane Goodall faced the reality many young people do: how to turn her passion into a practical life. Her family did not have means to support full university education abroad. She took a secretarial course in London, and from there landed work as a secretary at Oxford University. Later, she worked in London as a part of a documentary film production company, learning how films and storytelling work. This proved useful later in documenting her chimpanzee work. Jane's heart, however, remained in Africa. In 1957, she made a trip to Kenya to visit family friends. There she met Louis Leakey, a prominent anthropologist and paleontologist working in East Africa. Leakey recognized Jane's potential, her passion, and her observational skills. He invited her to assist in his paleoanthropological digs and offered support for her to attempt a long-term study of wild chimpanzees. Thus began a path that diverged from many traditional academic paths. Jane had no university degree in biology or zoology, but her determination, patience, and empathy would become her greatest credentials. In 1960, Jane arrived at Gombe Stream Game Reserve, Tanzania, then Tanganyika. Accompanied by her mother for moral support and an assistant cook, she faced the challenges of the African bush. First contact with wild chimpanzees, unfamiliar terrain, disease, logistical difficulties, isolation. At first, the chimpanzees fled at her presence. She could only observe from a distance. But Jane persisted. She returned daily to the same location, gradually earning their trust. She introduced small gifts of bananas, sat quietly for hours. In time, the chimpanzees accepted her presence. Some even approached her. Within 2 years, she was able to move around at 30 meters, eventually nearer. She began to name individuals, rather than number them. She studied grooming, feeding, social interactions, and started recording fine behaviors, gestures, communication, tool use. In a time when primate studies were often short-term, experimental, or confined to captivity, Jane's approach was radical. Long-term, patient, immersive study in the wild, allowing chimpanzees to reveal themselves over years of observation. Despite beginning field work without a formal degree, Jane's contributions were already catching attention. Her observations were producing insights that challenged long-held scientific assumptions. However, formal academic validation remained a hurdle. The University of Cambridge made an exception. In 1965/1966, Jane Goodall was awarded a PhD in ethology from Newnham College, Cambridge, remarkably, without first having earned a bachelor's degree. Her doctoral thesis was titled Behavior of Free-Living Chimpanzees. During her time at Cambridge, she also engaged with scientific peers, refined her methodology, and began to publish early findings. Her scientific legitimacy was now growing. Still, she continued her fieldwork at Gombe nearly full-time until around 1975. In the early years, Jane's pioneering observations began overturning conventional wisdom. She discovered that chimpanzees make and use tools, for instance probing termite mounds with sticks to extract insects. This contradicted the established belief that toolmaking was uniquely human. She documented chimpanzees hunting and eating meat, small mammals, monkeys, showing they were not strictly vegetarian as often assumed. She recorded rich social behaviors: grooming, play, conflict, alliances, reconciliation, mourning, gestures of affection. She treated chimpanzees as individuals with personalities. She noted that chimpanzees build nests in trees every night, bending branches and weaving leaves. She observed tool modification, e.g. trimming a twig to a proper length, and introduced the term tool use in primate studies. These discoveries shook the scientific community and forced reconsideration of the boundary between man and animal. When I first saw a chimpanzee using a stick to fish termites, I thought, this changes everything. As her reputation grew, Jane began to receive invitations to lecture, to publish more broadly, and to engage with institutions around the world. Jane Goodall's scientific observations were never purely academic. She felt deeply that understanding primates demanded an ethical response: conservation, habitat protection, and human-wildlife coexistence. In 1977, Jane founded the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI. Its mission: to support long-term research, especially at Gombe, to protect chimpanzees and their habitats, to work with local communities for sustainable development, and to promote public education internationally. Over time, JGI established programs in Africa and globally: conservation, policy advocacy, education, rehabilitation of orphan chimpanzees. One key program was Takare, Tanganyika catchment reforestation and education, launched in the early 1990s around the Gombe region. It integrated reforestation, sustainable agriculture, environmental education, and community development, recognizing that conservation must be linked with local human well-being. Another was the Chimpanga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center in the Republic of Congo, founded in 1992, to care for orphan chimpanzees affected by deforestation, hunting, or trafficking. In 1991, she launched Roots and Shoots, a youth program that encourages young people to take action in their communities for animals, environment, and human welfare. Today, Roots and Shoots has chapters in over 100 countries, with thousands of youth-led projects on conservation, education, and activism. Jane also served as a United Nations Messenger of Peace, appointed in April 2002, to bring attention to ecological, humanitarian, and sustainable development issues. Over the decades, Jane traveled extensively, speaking, advocating, mentoring, writing. She used her voice to call attention to climate change, habitat destruction, species extinction, animal rights, overconsumption, and the need for hope and action. Her communication skills, storytelling, passion, clarity, allowed her to bridge science and public consciousness. She authored over a dozen books: In the Shadow of Man, The Chimpanzees of Gombe, Reason for Hope, and many others. Jane's insight was not just in what she saw, but in how she told it, honestly, humbly, inviting others to see the world as she saw it. Amid her scientific work, Jane's personal life was intertwined with both joy and struggle. In 1962, National Geographic assigned Hugo van Lorik, a Dutch wildlife photographer and filmmaker, to document her work in Africa. Their collaboration deepened into love, and they married on March 28, 1964. Their union produced one son, Hugo Eric Lewis, nicknamed Grub, born in 1967. Hugo van Lorik's photography and film work brought public attention to Jane's research. His images helped shape how people saw chimpanzees and African forests. The marriage, however, faced tension. Jane was deeply rooted in Gombe, while Hugo's assignments often pulled him elsewhere. They eventually parted ways, divorced in 1974. Later, Jane married Derek Bryson, a Tanzanian political figure and director of the Tanzanian National Parks. That marriage continued until his death in 1980. Jane faced great challenges: isolation, disease, malaria, tropical illnesses, logistical difficulties in fieldwork, funding constraints, criticism from academic peers, and the emotional burden of witnessing habitat destruction and species decline. Yet she remained resilient, grounded, and committed. Even as she aged, Jane's passion did not dim. She continued speaking, writing, traveling, mentoring, and engaging youth with urgency and hope. Over her long life, Jane Goodall received numerous awards, honors, and recognitions, testimony to her impact on science, conservation, and humanity. Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, DBE, in 2004, for her services to environment and conservation. Templeton Prize in 2021, recognizing her contributions to spiritual understanding, ethics, and humanity's connection to nature. Presidential Medal of Freedom, USA, 2025, awarded by President in recognition of her lifetime service. Kyoto Prize, 1990, Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, and many others. Medals, honors, honorary degrees from universities worldwide. She also received the Stephen Hawking Medal for Science Communication, 2022. She held honorary professorships, visiting positions, e.g. at Stanford, University of Dar es Salaam, and was part of global bodies advocating conservation and animal welfare. But perhaps more important than awards is the ripple effect of her work. The thousands of young people inspired through Roots and Shoots, the chimpanzees saved or rehabilitated, the forest landscapes restored, the shift in how humanity views animals, cognition, empathy, and the heightened global awareness of climate, habitat, and interdependence. Her books, In the Shadow of Man, The Chimpanzees of Gombe, Reason for Hope, Hope for Animals and Their World and Others, became staples in biology, conservation, and public awareness. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. No life of impact is without challenges, and Jane's was no exception. Some criticisms and challenges that arose. Anthropomorphism and naming. Early critics accused her of anthropomorphism, assigning human traits, emotions, to chimpanzees. Also, instead of numbering chimpanzees, she named them, which some scientists considered subjective. Over time, many accepted that her approach, though unorthodox, yielded insights impossible via distant, detached observation. Academic skepticism. Some in the scientific establishment questioned her lack of formal early credentials, and whether her long-term observational method was sufficiently rigorous compared to laboratory or controlled studies. Ethical tension. Balancing scientific observation with advocacy sometimes created tension. Some argued scientists should be neutral. Jane believed you cannot observe ethically without caring about consequences. Habitat loss, funding, politics. The pressures of deforestation, human encroachment, political instability, and financial constraints often imperiled her work and threatened chimpanzee populations. Her reflections in later life often emphasized humility, hope, and the importance of engaging young people as agents of change. Jane's strength was not that she was perfect, but that she acknowledged doubt, curiosity, mistakes, and always sought to build alliances rather than impose dogma. As decades passed, Jane's role evolved, from field researcher to global ambassador, mentor, storyteller, and advocate. Even in her 80s and 90s, she remained active, traveling, speaking, writing, supporting projects, engaging online. In the COVID-19 period, she participated in digital campaigns, podcasts, e.g. Hopecast, and virtual education. She frequently returned to the words of hope, that even in dire climate and ecological crises, humanity still holds a window of opportunity. That each person can act. That communities, youth, local changemakers are key. On October 1, 2025, Dame Jane Goodall passed away in Los Angeles, California, at age 91, from natural causes, while on a speaking tour promoting conservation and hope. Her institute confirmed her death, and tributes poured in worldwide. In her passing, the world lost an advocate, a friend to animals, an inspiration, but her legacy lives on. As we reflect on Jane Goodall's life, several core themes emerge. These are not only about her story, but about ours. Jane showed us that deep observation, paired with empathy, can open doors science never anticipated. That the living world is not an object to dissect, but a mystery to engage, listen to, and grow with. She blurred boundaries between scientist and activist. Her belief: knowledge should drive action, but action should be gentle, respectful, and rooted in humility. For Jane, protecting animals meant protecting their habitat and supporting the human communities around them. Conservation isolated from people ignores the reality of interdependence. She placed deep faith in young people. Through Roots and Shoots, she nurtured a generation to see that even small actions matter, that hope is built by doing. Resilience, adaptability, and perseverance. Her life was not free of setbacks, but she persisted, evolved, and continued, believing that the arc of progress bends toward life, if enough hands help guide it. In a time of climate emergency, biodiversity loss, habitat collapse, and social disconnection, Jane's voice reminds us that it is not too late. She taught us that every choice, every seed, every restored forest, every voice raised in defense of the voiceless, counts. Dame Jane Goodall's life was a gift, of insight, of love, of challenge, of invitation. She asked of us not perfection, but wonder. Not passivity, but action. She invited each person to step into the forest of their own lives, open their senses, and listen. As we remember her, let us ask ourselves, what difference will I make? How will I live in greater harmony with the world that cradles me, and all life? Because the story she began has many chapters yet to write. In memory of Dame Jane Morris Goodall. Born April 3, 1934. Died October 1, 2025. Her life touched thousands, her legacy inspires millions, and her message remains urgent. We share this earth, and we are responsible. May her work continue in restored forests, protected species, youth-led action, and every heart awakened to wonder. As we remember Jane Goodall, let us not only look back with admiration, but forward with action. Let us honor her by doing what she did best: caring, observing, fighting, not for glory, but for life. Jane Goodall once said, "The greatest danger to our future is apathy." That she lived, loved, and worked shows her belief in hope. As she looked out across the trees, she saw not only chimpanzees, but possibility. May we carry that vision forward. Rest in peace, Dr. Jane Goodall. Your journey among the chimps has forever changed ours. Dedicated to all who speak for those who cannot speak.